So Danielle, your article, Pension Collaboration, Strength in Numbers, was I considered one of the foundation articles of the launch of the journal. But I think the idea of collaboration, it would still, even today, I think some pension fund people would scratch their heads and say, why is this topic important?
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Keith. Well, I think collaboration can represent a very powerful weapon for pension funds to pool together their resources. And really, it's about addressing market-wide systemic risks that individual pension funds alone won't be able to address. And here I'm talking about problems like short-termism, herding, excessive volatility, behavioral biases that affect the pricing of all assets. So for an individual pension fund who is at the vagaries of the market like everybody else in that situation, it's in their interest, and certainly in the beneficiary's interest, to pool together and try and figure out solutions to some of those problems.
What motivated you to get into this line of research?
I worked actually as an analyst on a trading floor, so I got to see the herding and the short-term tendencies of the market firsthand, and I have to confess I was one of them. And then I moved across into asset management, thinking now this is when we'll actually apply real finance. We'll take the Markowitz theory, it'll be great, we'll create optimal portfolios, it'll be a perfect world. And I realized actually in fund management, it's really just playing by the same rules. It's very much a short-term game. And we were also subject to the same problems of the dysfunction in the capital market system in the way capital is allocated. So I started to think about, well, how can we think about solutions to these challenges and collaboration in the sense of pooling capital and pooling power of resources of the pension fund seemed like a good way to go, and not only as an alternative to regulation, but certainly as a good complement, so that pension funds are really taking control of their risks and actually proactively managing their risks and not just leaving it to regulators.
So let's now look at the sort of the academic approach of saying, okay, the model of collaboration. Are there models of collaboration? Well, what are some of the origins of what motivates collaboration? That was, to me, a very interesting part of your article.
I mean, self-interest is one of the driving forces, in the sense that by pooling resources and pooling capabilities together, you can actually achieve an outcome, first of all, at a lower cost. So there is that ultimate driver that it has to be in the best interest of those parties that will be collaborating. And Axelrod wrote quite a nice series of books and articles and papers in the 80s that I drew from quite a lot in the article. And it was essentially drawing on that idea, well, in the financial markets, everyone's competing, right? How are you going to get people that are supposed to be competing to collaborate together? And the push factor that will actually shift from being competitive to collaborative is when it is in the best interest of the actors themselves. And so I guess the deal clincher for me in interpreting that literature was, when we're talking about systemic risks that affect the whole market, then it is in the best interest. So there might very well be still some competition between pension funds, and obviously there is in a DC world, no doubt that's going to be the case. But there is still market-wide risks that will affect even DC schemes in a way that will be beneficial to collaborate.
So how is the pension fund community doing? Here we are heading into 2011. Are you seeing some hopeful signs of the application of collaborative type of theories?
Yeah, I think we've come quite a long way. There are some really good examples. I mean, I'd say the Rotman ICPM is one of them. It's a group of pension funds funding research, which is great. Research is a really important part of the solution. The UN Principles of Responsible Investment, of course, is a really big collaborative venture that involves asset owners and asset managers from all over the world, and it's all about promoting more responsible investment practices, and it's been very successful in the sense that it's got a lot of people on board, and so far has a good longevity in that it's stuck around for more than a couple of years, and the signatory base is growing and becoming more powerful as a voice. And at the more local level, I think there are some pretty good examples. One project that I've been involved in is a project looking at climate change, which is a collaborative structure of 14 schemes around the world. And we've all come together to try and look at this issue purely through an investment lens to see what the risks and opportunities might be from climate change.
These collaborative strategies, the actual application, they just don't happen. You have to manage them to happen. What are some of the risks? What can go wrong when funds decide to say, we're going to collaborate on X? What should they be careful about avoiding?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the biggest risks is reducing the objective down to the lowest common denominator, so that actually you end up going in a circle and not really achieving anything because you're trying to get a consensus amongst the whole group. So I think right at the outset it's really important to have a very clear objective and clear aim in terms of what the collaboration aims to achieve, and then a very clear set of objectives around how that's going to actually be implemented over time. I think some of the collaborative initiatives that have died a slow death have really been those where perhaps there have been competing objectives and different reasons, perhaps not shared goals, that have really driven home that desire to keep collaboration alive. And as soon as you get competing objectives, then already you've moved away from a collaborative structure.
Now it's time for the looking 5 years ahead question. Is this area going to be incremental, or is there a possibility here that we could be on the verge of some higher level of collaboration among what is really a small number of very large funds, figures like funds over $50 billion. There are not that many of them in the world. It would seem like everybody knows everybody, but how do you get to the next level, or is there a next level?
Yeah, I think there are lots of industry bodies that represent pension funds around the world, and and they represent not just the super large pension funds, but the smaller schemes as well. Yeah. And increasingly, they're showing a lot more interest in not only providing a regulatory framework that's robust and a link into discussions with government, but really taking it to the next level and thinking about solutions to some of the capital market problems and the structure of the pension fund industry globally. So I think there is a long way to go in many areas, and there's so many subjects that pension funds could really delve into. And I think one obvious subject is about fee structures for active management. And I think particularly as we see asset allocation move more into unlisted assets, where the fee structures tend to be much higher. Is it reasonable? Is it fair? Is it justified? And can pension funds collectively start to place more pressure on what is a more reasonable fee structure? That's just one example.
Right, and in fact, if I can take that particular example a step further, something that I've observed a number of these funds saying, or rather than seeing if we can get these external providers to do it at lower fees, maybe we should do it ourselves. And I've certainly seen some significant movement in that direction. And then again, you get to a very interesting collaborative question around, well, if we're doing it ourselves and you're doing it yourselves, what are the bases for collaborating on potentially deals, knowledge sharing, information, etc.? Have you seen that in your travels?
We have actually seen some discussions along those lines, and I know some efforts have been made to try and set up knowledge sharing, where a particular pension fund might have expertise in infrastructure, another might have a very large internal team on private equity, another on real estate, and they're all representing different regions around the world. So that local knowledge is really important and valuable. I think it takes a lot of trust, and that sort of arrangement has to be through a very small a small focused group.
Yeah.
It's not something you can involve a large number of agents in. And but I think deal by deal, it certainly has validity to start moving in that direction. But yeah, the schemes would certainly need to know each other well and trust each other.
Well, it's interesting that you should mention the word trust, because I really do agree with you. Is that the way that to the degree to which you can minimize due diligence and all of the kind of things you need to do, if you can replace it by trust, because I'm doing it with people, I've done this before and I trust them, it strikes me that that might be the deal changer going forward. And that gets you back to networking opportunities of how do these people get to know each other better, and maybe that's an area of collaboration that could also be explored. Do these funds know each other well enough, or is there some higher level of trust that we could develop among them?
Yeah, indeed. No, I agree. And I think there are many more opportunities for pension funds to interact with each other, and sort of smaller seminars, smaller groups, not these massive conferences of 600 people. And I think they're really beneficial to encourage a very open dialogue. And also joining forces to fund particular research in areas where they're all interested, or conferences or seminars or think tanks to really look at issues that where there is common ground is another way of bringing schemes together to have that conversation.
Well, this then sets up our next collaboration, Danielle, which is that somewhere down the road you have to revisit this topic and see what progress we've made. But for now, thank you very much for this interview.